I'm Casey Stanley. I'm the City of Burien Parks and Recreation and Cultural Services Director, and I'm here tonight to introduce Mark and Marco from the Port of Seattle to talk about the Flight Corridor Management Program.
Good evening, everyone. Mayor Schilling, council members, city manager Balon. My name is Mark Leutwiler. I work for the Port of Seattle at the airport. I'm the assistant director of airport operations. It is my pleasure to be here this evening to talk about a very important topic about safety in the flight corridor that affects and surrounds our local areas. The next. I think which way. There we go. So our flight corridor management program is this is a required and ongoing safety across airports. So that's not just Seattle, but it's something that is for all airports out there, for large airports, commercial service airports. And this is to help identify and manage obstructions that may be in the flight path to aircraft. It's really important for the safety of individuals in the aircraft and also on the ground that aircraft have a safe path to come in to the approach and land at our airport here at Seattle and across the other airports. So this is a federally mandated program that all airports have to prescribe to. I know there's a lot of language in here for regulatory, but I want to focus on a few items over here. Is that we have federal, state, and local laws that regards obstructions around airspace. And obstructions could be a structure. In this case, tonight we're going to talk about trees, but those are things that may penetrate up into the surfaces of the airport to protect aircraft and airspace for that. These are very consistent with federal land use guidance and also within the City of Burien's code that keeps the airspace safe for both, like I said earlier, on the ground and in the air for that. This is really focuses on the height limits that pertain to structures, including trees for that. And then you see in here, we also quote the Burien requirement under for height limits at airport that we shall not allow trees to grow to a certain excess height. I had it good earlier here.
You got it.
Oh, we got it. All right, so every 5 years, the port conducts a comprehensive study. The last one was done in 2019, where we actually use a lot of ground surveys, aerial surveys to be able to look at obstacles that could penetrate into that may affect these surface restrictions that we have out here. And it's one of those things that we're looking for is that our goal is not, we're trying to be proactive about it. We're not trying to look at, yes, we are looking at obstacles, in this case, trees that are in that flight path, but also ones we're looking at that may grow into that flight path. So it's a very proactive program we do for every 5 years. So we're forecasting for 5 years out in the future what may penetrate this so we can take proper mitigations early on so they don't become a hazard later on. And I apologize about the granularity of this map a little bit, but this kind of shows a little bit of this map where kind of where we're going to talk about is Matheson Park and how it's approached what we call the west end of the runway, the newest runway built at SeaTac, is that if you're out there in the park area, is you think that the flight path is very linear, like straight across for that. But the way these surfaces work out, you need to be able to look at in an angle of protection for that. There's specific slope requirements. So that way for weather, aircraft and emergency situations, whatever, they have a clear path, not just straight down the runway, but off to left and right to be able to maneuver for their safety. And I said, this is a requirement for that. But you can see where Matheson Park falls into this little boundary of this kind of like, imaginary surface out there. So we try to transpose them on a map the best we could. We have a better map coming. So this is a little bit more technical. The information I want everyone to be able to focus here on the right. I apologize. It's not, I got the big map here behind me for that. But this area shows the trees and there's some specific trees out there, and it shows a little bit of these imaginary surfaces on the heights for those, and where these trees are projected to grow into for that. We talk about the sites, the surveys, and we call mean sea level. It's an average height, um, uh, not above the ground, but in a specific height that's measured for that. And we've identified 5 trees in this area, which we'll talk about here on the next slide, that could penetrate these surfaces. There we go. Here's a little bit different map where we talked about, so we have 5 trees that are in Matheson Park. Well, they'll be able to, that are going to penetrate these surfaces, we feel, in the next 5 years based on our consultant studies and for this report. There's a 6th tree in there that we worked with the city of Burien staff and their forester to be able to remove. The trees are clustered together, and it's just, if we're going to remove the surrounding trees, it's safer just to be able to remove that 6th tree. So something we've been proactively working on since this early spring. And we're talking about, removal. I know, trees are a very sensitive issue, and how do we go and remove those? What are their options to remove them? And that's something that we want to talk a little bit about. There's kind of 3, we're trying to follow best practices, and these are established best practices that the Port of Seattle have utilized, and we also have to work within the local city ordinances, counties and states, individual regulations. But our best practice is to fully remove the tree. And the reason we don't that is, like, we talk about topping the trees, as be able to just kind of like say, cut the trees, why don't you just cut down, a certain level of the tree for that? It also, the trees actually wind up dying to some extent. They get decay, they become safety hazards, where then they become potentially unsafe for that. Where they can crown the trees, which is kind of, a different version of topping, but then that just prevents more growth for the tree. It doesn't reduce the tree's height. It actually will, allows the tree to be able to grow up. Another option is to put lights on the tree. And by putting a light in the tree, there's an expense by lighting the tree for that, but there's also, it doesn't reduce the tree from growing. It also doesn't reduce the tree as being an obstacle in the future for that. So, we have a very, credit-based tree replacement policy that that we do. And what we do is that we actually, we try to sit and figure out how are we going to, replant these trees. So we've worked with a lot of following the city codes with the city of Burien. And let's see here. And we're required to do a 3-to-1 replacement. And so for every tree we remove, in this case, it'd be 6 trees in Matheson Park, we would replant 18 trees. And in doing that, we've worked with the city of Burien staff, and that 9 of these trees would actually be replanted inside the park itself. And then another 9 trees would be replanted in another area in Burien, to be determined, as working collaboratively with the city parks department and their forester about where to plant the other additional 9 trees. And as part of the Port of Seattle, as they're removing the trees, we got to safely remove them and also replant them. But we also are required to monitor the trees for their health, to make sure they're being planted properly and they continue to grow for the 2 years after replanting for the process. Here's a little bit of the schedule that we put together for these things. So the port, we have this flight management corridor program, and this is part of it, where we're looking at the flight corridor of the aircraft for different aspects of everything. And as part of that, we have to submit it for the State Environmental Policy Act. We need to be able to submit our program and results for that, submit it to SEPA, as noted in here. So there were some pro-organic SEPA public comments period that ended on September 11th. Moving forward, we hope that we can do a design for work by October 6th to complete the design work of what we need to do for tree mitigation. These are all just suggestions and has to be approved by the Port of Seattle Commission. So we have to go to commission for consideration about our flight corridor management program and effects it has on trees and the flight surfaces. And the earliest we look like we're forecasting would be that we would, it would probably be in the second quarter of next year before any tree removal process occurred. So it's a little bit of time before that. It, I guess for public communication is that one of the things before we get into any tree removal, which would be the second quarter of 2026, we would actually, proactively work with our communications team and City of Burien's team about being able to put out public information about the tree removal process so we can collaboratively work on the messaging together. So be able to put this out in advance to be able to message the community the removal of these trees. And with that, I would open up to any questions from our colleagues that are up front.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Mata?
Marco, good seeing you. I haven't seen you in a while there, Marco, so appreciate you coming to the meeting. I think one of my questions was gonna be topping the trees, and obviously not only does it affect the trees, but also I guess it's a different species of birds that start building nests that could create a potential problem for the planes. Now, I do like the fact that we're gonna get more trees. Obviously, it's painful to see trees that have been around for a long time to be cut down, especially when we've made that as part of the goal of the city to have more tree canopy. But I do appreciate some of the programs and some of the funding that the port, as an airport city, has the effort of making sure that we're getting more than, what was it, 36 or 32 trees? I think you will have helped fund some of the tree goals in the city. And I would say that in your next budget, it would be great to see more trees being able to be given to our community members and more trees in our city, because it's been a major goal of ours, not only to be a walkable city, a pleasant city, but also being able to take care of an environment. And being close to an airport is difficult as a city. I mean, this has been a long conversation for the last 8 years that I've been on the council on the noise mitigation and, some of the safety concerns. And those are all fair concerns. So I think for me is if there was any way to save the trees, and just looking at your presentation and in reading over, trees and the importance of trees, one, and figuring out, okay, well, we also have to have the ability to make sure that our residents and that are flying out and flying back in that are safe when they're coming in. So I didn't really have any questions other than I appreciate the presentation today. Thank you.
No, thank you. And so we're replanting 18 trees in the city of Burien.
Well, there you go. I give you a better number.
I know. Yeah. Thank you.
And if I could add as well, Marco Milanese, and the community engagement manager at the airport, we've also pledged to maintain the trees that are planted in Matheson Park for 2 years as well too, and make sure they survive.
Well, it's good to see. I think it's 1 year that you're on the hook for, but you're giving them extra years. So thank you.
I'll go ahead, Deputy Mayor Moore.
Thank you. And I really appreciate your showing up and answering some of the questions that had been pre-asked, so that those were going to be my questions, and I had to come up with a whole new batch of questions. So I appreciate that. I was able to come up with more questions, but I thought that we got off to a good start there. I guess the first question is, I know the park has been working with Burien since February, and that it went through a SEPA checklist and determined no value of the trees. And I want to ask how the designation of no value, or that there was no special value to those trees. When I look at trees in parks, I see two kinds of value. One is one is the value that any tree has, just in terms of, taking carbon dioxide, making oxygen, drinking up stormwater runoff, and so forth. The next is the value to a neighborhood where there are so many competing uses of land in a park as a place where we can establish a baseline of trees that people in the community can continue to visit as change happens in other areas. But the third, if you visit Matheson Park, is just like anyone in who's ever worn short pants on a slide knows this, is the cooling process from the shade in the park is something that isn't going to be replaced by 18 little trees for decades. So I guess my first question is, you know, was the value of the trees as part of that park, as an integral, actually part of the park that has a function in the play area, was that taken into account?
Neither Mark or I are part of the environmental staff at the airport, but I'm going to make a guess here and an estimate and wondering if the value estimation of no value might have to do with the timber cost of the wood, and wondering if that was the factor that made that decision. Not, I mean, the port agrees with you in terms of the value it brings for the park in terms of shade and just kind of the natural beauty, but I'm wondering if that might be related again to the timber value of the trees.
Is that something we could have follow up? Can I ask one more question before, how many more questions can I have?
Let's do one more and then we'll go to next one.
Okay, the next question I had just had to do with the turning at the flight corridor and the planes turning. What are the problems that you're anticipating the trees causing with that? And I heard about kind of the, you know, the specific height being important and the elevation being important. I guess what I'm seeing is sitting here 5 years from now, having the same conversation again about 5 more trees. So is this something that all of Matheson Park is slowly going to grow up and get cut down when it, you know, on its 100th birthday, or is there, are these the 5 trees that are the problem trees?
No, great questions for that. As you know, Matheson Park has a lot of trees in it, and we do this program every 5 years, and so we're not trying to look at beyond 5 years from now. So we're really just focused on these trees for this 5-year study for that. But to get back to your original aspect of it, is that aircraft, you know, at a normal and as a, you know, on a recreational basis, I've been a recreational pilot for over 3 decades, and I do really value the cities and the ordinances that do protect aircraft and trees and surfaces for that, because it's a critical part of aircraft. And under normal operations, aircraft, you know, have a certain flight path, but it's when at times when there's, you know, severe weather or emergencies for that, where the aircraft is not in its best performance, although those are very rare, those are things that were required with the FAA to have these surfaces built out from our airport. And Matheson Park, although it doesn't look that far from a standpoint, it's really only about 3/4 of a mile direct line of sight from the end of the runway for the closest runway at the airport. So it is in close proximity, even though it's off to the west a little bit. And so these are established procedures we have through the FAA to be able to, under various, you know, conditions, you know, it could be weather, emergencies, whatever, for aircraft performance, to be able to have the most safest path for that aircraft to be able to not obstruct an obstacle for that. And in there, so it is, and it's a proactive measure, and it's for the overall safety of those involved. I don't know if I was able to answer all your questions.
Councilor Garcia?
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for the presentation. I've, I guess, a 2, potentially 3-part question, but one, and it's related to costs. Could you share with us the cost of each option that was looked at? The removal, the cost to top it, the cost to crown it, the cost to light it. The trees are our biggest asset. It really is our most indistinguishable asset that the city maintains. So we are very proactive about protecting a tree canopy. And though the material cost of the wood might not be too much, according to potential consultant, I can't agree more with Deputy Mayor Sarah Moore in that these trees do provide a lot of shade and protection, especially for the flight path communities that bear the brunt of the pollution from the port. So I wanted to get the cost of that. And one of the other things that I wasn't sure about is there's a 2-year maintenance plan on maintaining the new trees. Who's paying for that and who's maintaining the trees? Is that us or is that you guys?
I'll answer the last one first. Yes, for the trees that are planted in Matheson Park, the port is covering the costs for maintaining those trees and making sure they survive. In terms of the cost of the other options, crowning or topping, it was determined pretty early in the program, this is the second phase of that program, that wasn't the correct way to go in terms of both safety and for the health of the tree. So I'm not sure if we actually ever costed out those options, but it's something I can look into if you want.
Please. And then the part of the maintenance is you paying for the maintenance, but is that you also, your staff maintaining it, or is that paying our staff to maintain the tree?
Believe the preference from the city was to have us do it. And then for the other 9 trees that would be planted somewhere else, there would be a cost, we would cover the cost to Burien for actually maintaining those trees wherever they decide to plant
Thank you. I
them.
did want to ask that because our staffing parks is thin, and I just don't want to overburden them, especially when it's something that we're doing for the port. One thing I wanted to share with the public is you have 1 day left to apply for the King County Conservation free tree giveaway here in the city of Burien. You can get a tree, a beautiful tree. There's many options, many sizes, many types. Today is your last day to get a free tree. Any resident in the city of Burien can apply for that. If you go into my council member Facebook page, you can see the link for that. You have until tomorrow, I think 5 p.m. Thank you.
Councilmember Ake.
Hi, thank you very much for being here to make this presentation. We had quite a few comments on this. And so really glad that you were here to address that. My questions are, what kinds of trees will replace the trees and how big will the initial trees be? And do you know what like the growth rate of the particular trees that you'll be planting will be to be able to, I don't know, provide shade as soon as possible and provide the kinds of needs that you're actually going to be replacing? We really are uninterested in the wood cost of a tree. We're actually interested in how the tree impacts the park and the environmental impacts of a tree. So I'm just kind of curious what those trees will be, how long they will take to grow, and what we can expect in the future for that. I did like Councilmember Moore's comments too about, you know, how important these trees are within the community and what they provide to the park. So I just want to reiterate that this is a big concern for our residents and for us here on City Council as well.
I can answer that, and I might have Josh jump in at once and tell the growth of the trees, because I won't know that. But we have identified 7 trees. So we do a shore pine, we do 3 of those, a lace bark elm 2, a white oak 2, a hackberry 1, and a black, how do you say that?
Black Tupelo.
Tupelo, 1. And they'd be 6 feet tall, 2 inches in diameter. Caliber. 2 inches in caliber. No, yeah.
Yeah, at caliber.
And you want to talk about how they grow?
Yeah,
Thank you, Josh, for coming up here randomly.
yeah, I'm here for another presentation, but been collaborating with Parks and the Port on this as well. And so we selected the trees, myself, Daniel, and Lisa, so the Deputy Director of the Parks and the Parks Maintenance Supervisor, for a variety of different things, ones that grow well in our climate, ones that will shade the playground. We cited them out of the way of like maintenance concerns. So some are getting removed very close to where our trucks drive. So we're not going to put them right back there. We're going to put them closer to the playground. So yeah, we have some evergreens, some deciduous trees. We can't plant anything that's going to get too tall. That's part of the agreement, is that it won't, grow into it. Over time, if we do need to remove more trees, we're gonna select other trees that hopefully fit well into this. And so as these trees grow and other trees need to come down, hopefully it'll be kind of a successional planting. This certainly won't remove all of the shade for the playground. But yeah, we try to do a diversity of different trees that are well suited to the site.
It's too bad we have to remove the trees at all, but thank you very much.
Deputy Mayor Moore, let's go with two more questions if you can
Yeah, I
fit
think-
within two more questions.
Just my unlimited scroll of questions that I have here. Yeah, so I guess the next question is, what is the argument against doing a full environmental impact study on the trees?
The, so this, they've gotten the comments and they've gotten the feedback from the public, and so they are now in the process of determining what that final determination might look like. So I don't want to presuppose anything. So that's ongoing.
Okay, and then when I went to visit the park, I saw 8 numbers on trees. Was that just to distinguish all of the trees, or what was, because I was like, oh, I thought they had said 5.
I can verify it's 5, and wondering if maybe you guys know a little bit more about why there were 8 tags.
Yeah, so when they first came in, they came in and tagged the trees that they thought could be an issue, and then they did another analysis on those trees and determined which trees were at that height that could reach that height and cause a issue. And so there was 5 trees out of those 8 trees that were identified.
Thank you. And I just wanted to wrap up by saying that normally we have most of our meeting after public comment, and today you were kind of the first on the lineup, but if you would be welcome to stay for public comment. I think that I tried to condense some of the comments people have shared with me, but that there may be more.
We'll certainly stay.
Mayor. Wonderful. Thank you. And I guess this question is more for Josh, since you're here, man. I want to take your expertise. Is 2 years maintenance when it's first planted, is that sufficient for trees? Or is there a established best practice that could better improve the chances of more certainty that these trees will be survival and do what they're supposed to do?
Yeah, that's a good question. 2 years is what's listed in our municipal code. So that's kind of what we have as a standard. It used to be the best practice as we get kind of hotter, drier summers with climate change. It's becoming more typical to extend that a little bit. In our private property tree code, we have 3 years as the establishment period. But 2 years often is good enough. It sort of depends on
Yeah,
the
well-
situation, but it tends to be a little bit longer.
Thank you very much for that. I would advocate to make sure that we look at 3 to 4 years in that case, especially since these trees are public and not private.
Okay. I would just say, I guess, for council, if there's further questions, to go ahead and email you, Marco. Would that work if folks, okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming down and giving us that information. We appreciate it.
Thank you for allowing us to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.